Tonight, a musician is speaking out after a judge ordered a white nationalist group to pay him more than $2.5 million. Now, this is a photograph from 2022 when Charles Morrell says that he was attacked by members of Patriot Front in Boston.
A judge now awarding him $2.7 million in a civil case against the Patriot Front. But Morrell's attorneys say the win sends a clear message that such behavior is not tolerated in the United States and that those who engage in such un-American conduct will be held accountable. WCVB attempted to reach out to the Patriot Front, but they did not respond.
Explain to our audience, what is it that you do? When we say Nazi hunter, what do you mean?
Yeah, so when I'm like meeting new people and doing the "Hey, what do you do?" thing, it always goes down to just Google my name because it sounds fucking ridiculous, or maybe it sounds a little less ridiculous in 2025 than it did 2 years ago or 3 years ago when I started these organizations.
I think it sounds cool, if I'm being honest with you. I saw the show with Al Pacino, and you seem like you're doing a better job than those guys did. So,
I mean, we identified a lot more than they did in that show. But yeah, so what we do is, I think the thing that most people are familiar with is how the January 6th insurrectionists were brought to justice before they were pardoned. It was regular, everyday people who were, maybe not tech savvy or anything, but just pissed off about what happened, watching the Capitol get attacked. And they spent time just going through Facebook, going through Twitter, cross-referencing photos and figuring out who the perpetrators were so that they could, more often than not, just post the evidence online and then the FBI would scrape it. What we do is we track hate groups like the Patriot Front, like Blood Tribe, like the Aryan Freedom Network. And what we try to do is gather evidence of criminality and hold them responsible for that in a court of law, whether that's on the civil side, working with potential plaintiffs, victims of hate crimes, or working with law enforcement. Our mission at Task Force Butler is to make it difficult and expensive to be a Nazi. Everybody has a First Amendment right. But when your Nazi ideology starts physically harming people or bringing people real harm, as you can prove in a court case, now you have to pay for being a Nazi.
Can I ask you a question? I'd say it's on topic pretty much. I'm interested in your perspective on this. A lot of my perspective is as somebody, and I'm a writer, I broadcaster, these various things. I'm a huge believer in the First Amendment. But I've even had, great reporter, longtime reporter who's gone to jail to protect sources, and others, Brian Karam, who's a good friend on. And he said a statement once that I like to repeat often, which is disinformation, actually isn't free speech. It destroys free speech. Mm-hmm. And we all know that you can't show Nazi symbols in Germany. You'll be arrested. In France, if you're considered part of a terrorist group, like a neo-Nazi, I think they include neo-Nazis, you can be arrested. These are places that are democracies. I'd argue at this point, they're more democratic than we are. And they have rights to speech, but unlike us, they end those rights somewhere. One other quick example I'll give is when that lunatic went up to a supermarket in Buffalo and murdered black shoppers. A number of Americans were like, encouraged him online. The only other person besides that guy that was arrested was a British national who was 19 years old and got a 10-year sentence for encouraging terrorism. Not here, because it was all free speech. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think it is hard to have a democracy coexist with encouraged violence. You start losing your other First Amendment rights, like the right to assemble and the right to religion. When somebody comes into your synagogue in Pittsburgh and mass murders people. So I know I'm talking too much, but let me throw that to you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I used to be a Republican. I used to be a libertarian. I am a combat veteran. I deployed to Iraq in 2005. And when I came home, in addition to the PTSD and all sorts of things, I was the kind of person that if I saw somebody burning a flag, I would have a violent reaction, right? Like a lot of my former colleagues and friends still do. That that feeling in me, that desire to protect the American flag, that represented something that my friends fought and died for, is every bit as understandable, I guess, as I would hope, my revulsion towards these neo-Nazis, right? I now understand, having gone to college, taken I think I still have my textbook on business law. Like, I now understand why people should have the right to burn an American flag. And you're not hurting anybody when you burn an American flag. But when you march down the street with a swastika, you are representing the politics of violence. Right.
And there's the concept of
inherently
stochastic terrorism I'll throw out there quickly. Go ahead.
When you carry a swastika, you are carrying a threat that you are broadcasting. No different from going into a movie theater and shouting fire when there's no fire there, right?
Right.
There are limitations on speech. That's not the way that the judicial branch interprets things, the way that I think it should be when it comes to things like swastikas. But that is why I focus on criminality, because
fair.
Frankly,
I just was wondering your what you thought, but I mean, absolutely fair.
So, and reason being is, the more Nazis that we get locked up or get sued, like we were responsible for the research that led to a $3 million lawsuit or judgment against Patriot Front. The more that we do
Thank
that,
you, by the way.
Thank you. And the more that young men who, young white boys who are recruits for these people are going to look at that and be like, I don't know if that lifestyle is for me. I don't want to be in debt for the rest of my life. So our goal is simply to impose costs on people who actually cause harm, to convince others that they shouldn't follow that radicalization pipeline.
Kris, you mentioned that you try to go after the criminality of these folks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what are the sort of crimes that you most often catch them doing?
Well, neo-Nazi and Vice News a few years ago had I wish I could remember the title of it. It's something like, "Why do neo-Nazis keep getting arrested for kiddie porn?" Right? That may sound like out of left field, but the same kind of edginess of like racist jokes that start to get internalized, that exists in the same part of the internet where predation of children is at first like a sick joke, and then it becomes real. There have been several members of the group Patriot Front that have been arrested and convicted for crimes like that. There have been others who are arrested for what I think could reasonably be charged as terrorism, for doing things like planning to shoot up electric stations in Maryland to put the city of Baltimore under a blackout for weeks, if not months. They've been arrested for weapons charges. As a matter of fact, this guy Kai Liam Nix, he was an active duty soldier at Fort Bragg who started posting my home address online, who started encouraging people to try and get a SWAT team to break down my door, and then posted recordings of that. Right? He hasn't been charged for any of that, but he's in federal custody right now for weapons dealing, both international and interstate. And the guy was like 21 or something when he finally got caught. But he had been doing this since he was a teenager. He was involved in Patriot Front since I think he was 17.
Kris, I loved how you were talking about essentially the crowdsourcing to try to blow the lid off of January 6th, and everybody was part of that, and the way so many people came together. How much do you rely on that now for the work you do? And for people who want to help you, what can they do to join your cause?
Yeah, so Task Force Butler Institute is a very small program. We have only a handful of veterans and volunteers who are working on targeted projects. It'll be everything from a hate group, like the first paper that we ever published was in 2022 about Patriot Front. We connected them to a bunch of violent hate crimes, which resulted in this $3 million lawsuit, a handful of convictions, et cetera. We're also going after things like Doge. There are a bunch of people, as has been publicly reported, with like Nazi sympathies within Doge. But, we unfortunately have, because we're a little spicy, we are Nazi hunters. We are going after some of America's most dangerous people. We haven't gotten the institutional support that's necessary to really stand up an organization, pay people. So we are teeny tiny. The best way that people can support us, though, is to, one, spread our message. And if you're a small donor or a big donor, you can go to our website at taskforcebutler.org and make a donation. We are a 501c3. It is tax deductible. And I can promise you that it is, there is no nonprofit. There is not a single other nonprofit that works in anti-hate that gives you a better bang for your buck than my teeny tiny little underfunded organization that has cost neo-Nazis millions of dollars, put them in jail. There's just nobody else who does that.
Would your group be amenable? Let's suppose out there who says, hey, I have my community that I know is dabbling in white supremacy and Nazism, and he's organizing other people, and I've seen them, stealing.
Mm-hmm.
Could that person then contact you, give you the information, and let you pick up the ball from there?
So we unfortunately don't have the bandwidth. I'm just to give you a sense of how many people are interested in this work. When we launched our very first report in September of 2022, I had a sign up form on my website for less than 24 hours, and we had over 200 veterans sign up and fill out an application form that was like several pages. We just do not have, like, the incoming that we get is tremendous. So the partner organization to Task Force Butler Institute is called Veterans Fighting Fascism. Rather than do the hunting, Veterans Fighting Fascism is about training people, not just veterans, training Americans on how to go on offense for democracy. And if folks have a neo-Nazi in their neighborhood and the law enforcement isn't doing anything about it yet, what we want for you to do is get locally organized. TaskForceButler.org, we have several guidelines on how people can actually do the Nazi hunting thing, and we encourage you to work with law enforcement when it's safe, when it's appropriate. And on Veterans Fighting Fascism, we have what we call the Anti-Fascist Book Club. It is not just about reading. It's not just about sitting around, talking about what you've read in a book. It's about giving people an excuse to go into a third space. Like, we have lost that in America. Getting people to go face to face, maybe not with their friends, maybe with neighbors that they need to build a relationship with. Because when fascism comes to the United States, it's not just in the White House. It's not just in the halls of Congress. It's at the grassroots. And that is where each of us as individuals can have the greatest impact.